In this battle plan for the future of your association, where the board is pitted against the forces of Mother Nature and Father Time, it's imperative to have a battle plan for victory. The war will never end against deterioration, but boards can win each battle that comes their way. The key is to know your responsibilities, your strengths, and your weaknesses, while courageously standing on a time-tested battle plan so you always know your next move. We want your association to have success in the battle against deterioration. Let me close out this first chapter of the Rules of Engagement. Adrian, when we were talking earlier, you talked about there's actually two people that are the owners might be fighting. Sometimes the board or the knight is not fighting, and in that case, they're doing damage to the association when they are not doing what they need to do. So sometimes there's the dragon out there, and sometimes it's a non-functioning board. So again, we want to be very clear that the board has a job. They wear a different hat. And like you said, when they become a board member, they have a new role. And that role is the fiduciary of the association. They're caring for the association. And that's an obligation. So that's a different role. So we just want to make sure we're pressing that point very clear. Okay.
So a non-functioning board that's not reserving becomes the dragon, becomes the problem.
Yep.
And a future board that steps in and tries to fix it, they get blamed because they're the one doing the special assessments, when actually they're trying to do the right thing.
Exactly. And that's that momentum factor.
Right.
Yeah. So what we're trying to do here is make sure you're hearing and seeing the complexities of what we're working with here. Okay. How to slay the dragon. Let's talk now about a few points to help you get the upper hand. Now, Mother Nature and Father Time are formidable opponents, but what can you do? Let me turn you back over to Adrian for a couple moments.
Yeah, another lawsuit that I was involved in was brought in as an expert. The association was badly underfunded and had deferred maintenance. And their reserves, they just, again, I don't even remember what the reserve, in their case, I think it was at 12% is where they were funded. New board came in, decided that they need to take care of this problem, and they started funding the reserves and taking care of maintenance problems. 3 years into their funding plan, as they're building up their reserves and taking care of maintenance, their cast iron drain lines throughout the complex, throughout the community, they started failing. And they all started failing about the same time. Pretty remarkable. And it was due to a manufacturing defect in the cast iron, causing it to crack. And so what they had to do was to impose an emergency special assessment on the membership. Well, an owner who had bought in the year before and also happened to be an attorney sued the association and sued them for, breach of fiduciary duties, negligence, all those kinds of things that you would normally throw into a lawsuit, and breach of their CC&Rs. They brought me in as an expert, and I looked at what they were doing, and the board had been acting properly. They were bringing their reserves up. They were funding them, and had it not been for that defect in the cast iron, which was totally unexpected, they were on course. There wouldn't have been a special assessment, and they would have been able to take care of all their maintenance issues with their components. Once I showed that to the court found in the association's favor and found against the plaintiff. So the plaintiff lost in that case. So this is where, if a board, even if you're underfunded, you start doing the right thing, you're going to be protected. And even if a lawsuit gets filed, you could show that you, as this board, were doing the right thing, even though prior boards may not have.
And that's just an illustration of the business judgment rule that you were talking about a moment ago.
Exactly.
Excellent.
Okay, the next one, the state laws. Going back to this issue, you've got 25 states that don't have anything, 25 that do in various kinds. As boards, you need to find out what your obligations are under the law, because the law is going to trump your governing documents. So even if your governing documents don't say anything about reserves, and the law does, you got to follow the law. and then look to see what your documents say, because it may have additional requirements related to your finances and maintenance obligations. So this is important for boards. And this is where you're going to have a reserve analyst come in and help you set up a plan, a funding plan, and legal counsel to take a look at your documents to see what your obligations are, and also to tell you what laws apply to your situation. So once you're, as a board, you're doing that, you're helping to slay that dragon, in that you're doing what you're obligated to do, which then you're protected under the business judgment rule. Okay, the next, there we go. Acting like a fiduciary. Again, as soon as you're elected to the board, you become a fiduciary, which means you're supposed to act, you're required to act in the best interest of the community. So that board I mentioned earlier, they were not doing that. They were acting in the best interest of a few, and even then it turned out to not be in their best interest because they were losing their units. So you have an obligation as a board to be looking at what you're obligated to do, and that is to do what? To maintain the common areas. And you can't do that if you don't have the money to do the maintenance. And especially on big ticket items that have a longer life, when they come due, you need to have that money in place in order to replace those roofs, to repipe the buildings, to do whatever the big project is going to be, upgrade the elevators. It's important as a fiduciary that you act in the best interest of the community by setting aside those funds. Okay, the next one. Okay, and the budget to pay your bills, spending. So this is important. From time to time, I run into a treasurer or even a board that believes it's their duty to sit on the reserves and never spend them. Well, actually, spending them is one of their duties. They're required. You need to spend them if you're going to do your job right. So you put the money aside so that when it's time to re-roof, you've got the money to do it. And as a second bullet point there, wanting real estate is expensive. That's true. And in fact, I'm sure, Robert, you know that those that are on either coast on the water, their components will fail sooner than those that are inland.
Absolutely.
So it's important to know exactly, and this is where the reserve analysts come in, because they'll be able to look at and know, identify all the components, know what the remaining lifespan is, and what it's going to cost to replace them, and how to set aside money to reach that goal so that the money is there when it's time to replace the components. Okay, the next one.
Right. And we're wondering, what is that? How much is that? And the answer is it's usually the cost to keep things balanced, to have enough cash going into reserves so that you're prepared at the right time, is typically about a quarter of your total budget. And the range is typically 15 to 40%, but a real easy figure of merit for the purpose of this conversation today, 25%. And if you are skimping on that, if you check your budget after the program today and you see that you're only setting aside 10% towards reserves, I think you're going to find out like that lady that was looking at, I think, the cupcake and the apple that Adrian, you showed earlier. The costs are going to be there. The roof is going to need to be replaced. The only question is how you're going to pay for it. So you're never really saving homeowners any money by not funding reserves. So keep this in mind. Typically, it's going to be about a quarter of your total budget.
Yeah, let's go back for a second to that slide. If they don't set aside the reserves, they're still going to be spending that money. They'll be spending it on legal fees and insurance, because they could lose insurance coverage or have it spike significantly, especially when lawsuits start getting filed, as was happening with this one association. They had numerous lawsuits filed against them because of all the damage coming in through those roofs. So it's either you pay something that you know what the numbers are and you can budget for it, or you wait to get sued and lose insurance and then pay significantly more monies at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I think the associations that go down that path think, oh boy, it would have been so much cheaper just to fund reserves the way we should have. Those kinds of things. Very good point. Thanks, Adrian. Other ways tools you can put at your disposal is update your reserve study regularly. National best practice is a with site visit based reserve study every third year. That gives you current information so you know where the dragon is, how close it's approaching, how big it is, and you can fund as recommended in light of the reserve fund balance, interest and inflation, changing costs. You're going to get that fresh information from that updated reserve study. And then, as Adrian said just a moment ago, spending money is your job. It's your job to take care of the place and do timely repairs and replacements before they get overly expensive. So plan, get that updated plan, and then follow the plan. And then we want to make sure that you understand there's financial challenges here, there's legal challenges here, but 1/3 of the solution is in your hands. Expect that the solution is as much communication as it is financial. You want to keep the homeowners on your side, aligning them, understanding that the enemy is the high costs. It's the dragon of inflation, the dragon of deterioration. It's those kinds of things. So it's incumbent upon you to be a great communicator and help your association understand what you as the board are trying to do to take good care of the property. You're just doing your job. So with that, we'll draw this program to a conclusion. And I just want to say a couple things here and just understand that in the big picture, what we're working with here is the community association industry. It's multi-million-dollar, not-for-profit entities run by an untrained volunteer board of directors, most of them with very short-term seats on the board, a year or two, maybe three. Sometimes they re-up and do it for a while, but when you have these very significant real estate entities run by untrained volunteers, what could possibly go wrong? And from my point of view, I see so many associations running themselves out of money and just not spending, not collecting, and ignoring the fact that Mother Nature and Father Time are day by day ravaging their association. Adrian, what do you see?
Yeah, let's go to the next slide because the liability issue, what's happening is in the industry, first of all, litigation's on the rise. We're seeing more lawsuits being filed. And people that are, and it's usually water damage. We see a lot in condominiums, and that is because of pipes, drain lines, windows, roofs. Water comes in and it just finds its way in. If the association hasn't been maintaining the property properly, lawsuits get filed. When lawsuits get filed, insurance companies look for an excuse to drop coverage because the industry's been hit really hard with wildfires on the West Coast, hurricanes on the East Coast, and tornadoes in the middle. And so if they can find a reason to drop coverage or to significantly increase premiums and raise deductibles, they will do it. So what you want as a board to avoid is getting sued. And also if the association, if the insurance is taking under a reservation of rights, and it doesn't settle and there's a judgment, the insurance won't necessarily be paying the judgment.
Right.
So it's really important for boards, if they want to avoid liability, to take their responsibilities seriously on maintaining the common areas, and that means maintaining a good reserve.
Yeah, and taking good care of the place so you don't make your insurance company nervous and they say thanks but no thanks, and then you're left to try to find a new insurance company that's going to cost a whole lot more.
Well, just prioritizing the needs, and that is the maintenance, because their number one obligation is to maintain the common areas, not to maintain low monthly assessments. I mean, if you can do both, that's great. But it's better for the membership to have regular small increases, keeping up with inflation, because it's easier for them to absorb than to go 15, 20 years with no increase and then suddenly massive special assessments and huge dues increases. And we've had clients that have done both, where they've had to do 20% increase in the budget for a couple of years in a row, plus special assessments, in order to try and get enough cash in order to take care of all of the deferred maintenance and projects that were critical that had to be done. So, prioritizing the needs means, number one, is maintaining the common areas, and that means funding it, which means reserves and proper assessments. Okay, communications, absolutely. Letting people know what you're doing, why you're doing it, being transparent, showing them the information. You'll have some that will fight you no matter what, but if you stay on course, you do what needs to be done, you can avoid lawsuits.
Let me leverage from that. Stay on course. Many of you who are here in today's program are in associations that are in an underfunded situation or a challenging situation. Well, most likely it took years or decades to get there, and it may take time for you to turn the momentum and turn the corner and start getting things going in the right direction. And we want to let you know that if you have expectations for immediate change, you probably got to let that go. We're going to encourage you to move forward. It's worth the journey. So get wise counsel and lead your association well. We want you to be one of these victorious knights that have looked after your association, fighting the dragon, keeping the dragon at bay, keeping the dragon away from your association, and leading to a peaceful and productive association where people enjoy being part as the members of that association. Well, I want to make sure we take a moment here to thank Adrian for joining us today as our special guest. You can see some of the resources we spoke about at adamssterling.com. That's Adams, ADAMS, Sterling.com, and the matching website, Dava Sterling, where they have a lot of research. That's great stuff, especially if you're in California. Down the bottom right, you can see newsletters and awards. If you sign up for his newsletter, even if you're outside California, that is so much wise counsel, common sense advice. Again, remember, Adrian's primarily serving a California audience, so he may have some California references, but it's great stuff. I enjoy reading that every time. Puts a smile on my face, and I feel like I've got an edge over the associations that don't. And for association reserves, we're at reservestudy.com. As you heard, we've done a lot of reserve studies all across the country, all 50 states since 1986, and plenty of resources on our website. All those resources are also on YouTube. We have a strong YouTube channel where if you search for reserve studies, most likely they're ours. I got short content and longer format content where full webinars like we're doing here today. And then we also have a written resource, a book called Understanding Reserves. We just released the second edition just a couple of months ago. And you'll find all the reserve concepts we spoke about today in that book. It's easy for someone to read. It's not a technical document. You can order it on Amazon.com. I've got a copy here on my desk, and I'll hand it out for someone who asks a great question during our Q&A session. That'll be in just a couple moments. And finally, a free resource. We have a weekly podcast for board members. It's called HOA Insights, Common Sense for Common Areas. 30 minutes, once a week. New episodes drop every Monday. You can find the episodes on the website, hoainsights.org, wherever podcasts are found, or also on our YouTube channel. So great information there to encourage and equip board members to reinforce the sound financial and fiscally responsible principles that we've been talking about today. We have guest experts. Sometimes it's minutes, sometimes it's reading your financials, and we also celebrate board heroes on the podcast. So it's just a fun place to be part of the national community and to get refreshed with some encouraging information on a weekly basis. That's HOA Insights, Common Sense for Common Areas. And with that, I'll turn the microphone over to Paige, who will coordinate our Q&A time together. At Association Reserves, we make the present less stressful and the future more secure. If you want to join us in this mission, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Leave a comment down below on what you'd like to see us address in a future video. Let's plan for your best future.